Good evening and welcome to World Today, a brand new show on DD India which brings you, which is your daily window to the world. I'm Amritpal Singh. On the show tonight we have much more over the next 1 hour, but first up, the headlines we are tracking at this hour. World Health Organization of the WHO warns Europe on the cusp of another massive COVID-19 outbreak as numbers soar all across the continent. Portugal's President Marcelo Rebelo de Sousa calls a snap general election for January 30th, a week after Parliament threw out the minority socialist government's 2022 budget bill, ending 6 years of relative political stability. On the continent of Africa, nearly 69 people, including a mayor, have been killed in an attack by gunmen in southwestern Niger. The assault was latest in Niger's tri-border zone with Burkina Faso and Mali. And in sports, English club Tottenham Hotspurs beat Dutch club VITESSE in a thrilling Europa Conference League match and currently stands at second spot, whereas WESTHAM United enters the knockout rounds of the Europa League. So those were the headlines we are tracking at this hour, and now the news. Let's begin with the big news. WHO has warned that Europe may again become an epicenter of COVID-19, calling the recent surge in COVID-19 cases across the European countries a grave concern. The regional director of WHO for Europe, Hans Klug, said that Europe must work harder to prevent COVID-19 from spreading further.
Calling the recent surge in COVID-19 cases across the European countries a grave concern, the regional director of WHO for Europe, Hans Klug, said that Europe must work harder to prevent COVID-19 from spreading further. Hans Klug told a media briefing that current transmission rates in 53 European countries are nearing record levels, exacerbated by the more transmissible Delta variant of the virus. The region saw a 6% increase in new cases last week of nearly 1.8 million new cases compared to the week before. The number of deaths rose 12% in the same period. Klug said that if the region follows its current trajectory, another 500,000 COVID-19 related deaths could occur in the region by February next year. Patients with coronavirus continue to overwhelm Romanian hospitals as the Eastern European country struggles to deal with the fourth wave. Romania, at the forefront of a wave of COVID-19 sweeping across Europe, reported record numbers of daily coronavirus infections in October and says that the hospital system is stretched to breaking point. The country has the second lowest coronavirus vaccination rate in the European Union. Romania has more than 15,85,000 cases of the disease, with fatalities crossing 49,600. Belgium reported a steep rise in COVID-19 infections and hospitalizations back to levels last experienced in October 2020, 3 days after the United States advised its citizens against traveling to the country that hosts European Union and NATO headquarters. Data from Belgium's Sciensano Health Institute showed 6,728 daily new cases on average in the last 14 days, up 36% from the previous week. An average of 164 patients with COVID-19 were admitted to hospitals daily in the last 7 days, a 31% increase, and 343 patients were in intensive care. World Today Desk, DD India.
And for more on that story, we are joined by Dr. Sunil Kumar Raina. He's advisor, World Health Network and COVID Action Group, and Professor, Head of Community Medicine, Government Medical College in Himachal Pradesh. Dr. Raina, what is the reason for the rise in this, the sudden jump that we're seeing in the Eastern European nations? In fact, China is also, on the uptake when it comes to COVID-19 cases.
First, thanks for having me on the show, Amit. Now, we need to understand a few things about COVID at this point in time. One very important thing is that once vaccination arrived, most of the nations across the world thought of this as a signal to tackle this pandemic. And we have seen over a period of time that if we are looking at a single tool as a way of tackling this pandemic, we will not be successful. This has been proven time and again. If you look at Israel, for example, last year, Israel started vaccination and it was able to reduce the numbers to a large extent. Again, once the fact that numbers were reduced, they kept increasing when the COVID appropriate behavior was dropped down. In contrast, if you look at Europe and if you look at UK in particular, for example, UK for the last 3 months has never ever seen a large drop in the number of cases of COVID. The peak that they saw around July end has continued to stay like that only. It has shown some dips at some point in time, but they are more or less still the same. We didn't see a large number of drop in cases across UK. But at the same point in time, when the number of cases were not dropping in UK, and UK thought that they will advance a large vaccine program and use that vaccine program as the way to target this pandemic. And once they said that, they thought that this pandemic was a pandemic of unvaccinated. All those who will get vaccinated will prevent the occurrence of the pandemic. We need to understand that if we are to target this pandemic through vaccination, your vaccines have to be very efficacious, they have to be high quality vaccines, and you have to have 100% coverage. But you can never have that. UK didn't have a very efficacious vaccine for tackling the pandemic in terms of the fact that it would reduce transmissibility. Second, UK could not cover its entire population. At the same point in time, UK was not very strict with COVID appropriate behavior. It didn't force mask wearing, for example, in public. If you go to July and August, and if you look at the way India and Indian cricket test series was played, you could see huge number of people in those stadiums watching these cricket matches without wearing masks. So on one hand, you had no mask in public, less stricter rules for people to follow, no jump in vaccination which they were expecting over a period of time, and the fact that they thought, as a narrative, they thought that this was the pandemic of the unvaccinated. The more and more we get vaccinated, more and more are the chances of us getting rid of this pandemic. But they didn't follow the suit. They couldn't vaccinate many people at the same point in time. So probably it has been something that has not worked well for UK, is not working well for Europe, because they are largely relied on one strategy. The successful strategies around the world have been a combination of them. It has been to have vaccine rollouts, plus at the same point in time, talk of COVID appropriate behavior. Continue to use social distancing, continue to use masks in large places. So that's something that has to work out across Europe as well as UK if you want to drop down or bring down the number of cases that are happening there at this point in time.
Dr. Raina, are you then arguing that vaccination or the vaccine is no 100% defense against COVID?
You need to understand it. I always say that the default setting for this pandemic was set at death. So what you said was that if you are able to prevent deaths, if you are able to prevent hospitalizations, means of preventing these deaths or hospitalization, we should use that as a tool of major concern or major force. So vaccination was able to prevent deaths. Vaccination has been seen to be effective in preventing deaths. It has been seen to be effective in preventing hospitalization. But none of the vaccines that we are in the market at present around the world are providing a sterilizing immunity. By that, what I mean is that it doesn't prevent transmission of infection from one person to another by huge amount. So you don't have a chance that one person was infected with, for example, with Delta now, has a higher chance of preventing the transmission to other if he is vaccinated. Vaccines do one thing, they prevent death, they prevent hospitalization, but their chances of being able to prevent transmission are not 100%.
Dr. Raina,
other COVID appropriate behaviors, your chances of reducing transmission are not foolproof, they are not 100%.
Okay.
So that's where the problem is.
Doctor, then let me ask you, if the vaccine prevents death and it's not a complete defense against transmissibility, it reduces the chances of transmissibility, where is the problem? If I get the virus, I don't die, it doesn't take me down, it doesn't hospitalize me, I move around, do my job okay, I am able to carry on my daily chores, then probably it's as harmless as common cold, it will come and go. So why do we need to take it that seriously?
That's an excellent question, very honestly. The problem with this virus is that even if we are able to prevent deaths, the fact that we are able to transmit from one person to another results in a number of cases. It results in a high number of cases, as you are seeing in Europe at this point in time, or UK for that matter in this point in time. Once the number of cases increases, once the total number of cases increases, you have a higher chance of mutations happening in this virus.
Okay.
So if your numbers are very less, they're at the bottom, they are near zero, your chances of mutations happening are very less. But when the numbers go on increasing, despite the fact that it may not be causing death at this point in time, but the fact that it is circulating in the atmosphere, it is circulating between humans, so there is a chance that we may see a new mutation, which may not be as good as we had seen the previous mutations to be there. So if we see a mutation which is again harmful, the vaccines won't be effective. The fact that it will cause deaths because it's a new mutation that has happened around us, which was not there earlier. So keeping the numbers low is also as critical as preventing deaths.
Okay.
Because as the numbers will be there, as the numbers will rise, the fact that mutations may happen, and mutations can go both ways. They can go left or right. If they vanish on their own, that's fine with us. But if they don't vanish and they continue to cause hospitalization or they continue to cause death, that's a problem for us.
Okay.
So keeping numbers at the lowest is the key. That's why you see people around, for example, Taiwan wanting to have it at zero. China, despite the fact that they have been trying, they're making major efforts to keep it at zero, have not been able to do it. So keeping it at zero is very key. As low as possible is the strategy in addition to vaccination. And the best way to keep it as low as possible is to use the COVID appropriate behavior in addition to vaccination as a major tool for tackling this pandemic.
Okay. We hear, Belgium saw 36% jump as compared to the last week, 31% for Romania, a lot of hospitalization. Their health infrastructure is at break point. Once, it's like a situation that we once saw in, say, India, or even during the first week in New York and parts of America, where the health infrastructure literally collapses because of the sheer numbers of people turning up at hospitals. So what is the way out? What does Europe need to do? Enforce strict protocols now? Impose lockdowns? Is that the answer?
Absolutely. No, the problem with Europe has been there for last 1 year or so. I have always been talking of. Europe follows a different modality than India, for example, or China, for example, or Taiwan, for example, or New Zealand, or Australia, for that example. Europe had always had a conflict with themselves. Europe was worried about liberties more than the lockdowns. So they never ever went into strict protocols. They never ever implemented stricter protocols that were seen around the world. So unless and until we resort to those stricter protocols, unless and until we are able to drop down the cases, it's not possible to control this pandemic. At one point, it's like you want to clean an area and you have kept the tap open. So unless and until you are able to close the tap, then only you will clean the area. The problem with Europe, again, another problem with Europe is their primary healthcare system, unlike India and some other parts of the world, is not as robust as we thought it was, because they were very technology dependent. So the primary care, the public healthcare system is not as robust as in India. So their conflict with the fact that they will be compromising their liberties if they go into a lockdown is a cause for concern, is a cause for this crisis. And unless until they revert back to the same mode that everybody around the world has used, using stricter lockdowns, using stricter protocols, they will not be able to control it, because it will run out of the fact that they will not have the resources, the facilities to control the pandemic. More number of people hospitalized, more deaths will be there, and then the panic buttons will start rolling on.
Okay. Dr. Raina, I just came back day before from Europe, from Italy actually, and I was moving around the streets of Rome, seeing tourism pick up. So just about a year back, people there, the Romans, were telling me that it was a ghost town. Remember in January 2020, I think it was, when 2 Chinese tourists from Wuhan went to Italy, and Italy became the epicenter of COVID-19 deaths in Europe, and then it went on to the rest of Europe. But as borders open up, as travel takes place, is the whole world again at risk if a region as prominent as, say, Eastern Europe, there is suddenly an uptick in the number of the cases? Is the world again at risk now?
Absolutely. I keep saying this, the infection anywhere is infection everywhere, because this is something which spreads very fast. So if we have a new variant coming up across anywhere in the world, the chances of reaching it everywhere else is always there. So, for example, if Europe has it now, it is always a chance that it will move to it will move to US, it may move to UK, or it may move to India tomorrow. So it is imperative on all of us. It's absolutely necessary on all of us that we get rid of this pandemic across the world, not just from certain geographical areas. So that's wherein I said both the things, the vaccination as well as COVID appropriate behavior will be critical. Now, Europe, as I keep talking to my counterparts in Europe, they say that inter-country travel has a problem because of the fact that once you start implementing restrictions in inter-country travel, for example, in Europe, then the question of liberties, compromising on liberties rises up in Europe. And then people go on the streets that you can't do this. So that's somewhere a compromise has to be made, and people have to be taught that this is absolutely necessary if we have to ensure liberties in true sense, if you have to ensure livelihood in true sense. Because at some point in time, if you are going for a stricter enforcement of protocols for maybe 3 to 4 weeks, you are ensuring the fact that your numbers will drop and you will again be able to witness a near normal life. Than if you continue to use these protocols that are in place at this point in time, open borders, people moving from one place to another, the new variants on the horizon, vaccination not at its peak, and COVID appropriate behavior compromised.
Okay. There's one thing, that I wish to know from you, something which I was seeking an answer while I was in Rome. Nobody wears a mask outside. Even the government does not enforce wearing a mask outside. It's optional. Only when you go inside buildings are you told that please wear a mask. If you're moving around in the markets, in the tourist spots, in the city, basically out on the streets open, what is the reason that the Europeans and the West in particular, my friends tell me in the US also, if you're outside, they don't enforce wearing a mask, unlike in India. What is the reason of that? Does that, is it believed that in open the risk of infection is less or transmissibility is less?
Not precisely. Because as I speak to the scientists from Europe and America, they always say that there's always a chance of infection being picked up from outside as well. But the problem, as I said, in Europe and most parts of US is that they think wearing mandatory use of masks in public is a
it's curtailing their freedom.
Liberty. It compromises their liberty. It compromises their principles of living. Second important thing that I see in Europe and US is what I believe is the concept of precautionary principles. Unfortunately, apart from Italy, earlier parts of the pandemic, the Florence in Italy, and some parts of the Europe in earlier part of the pandemic, Europe and US did not see a large compromise on their healthcare system as we saw in some other parts of the world. Now, what signal that sent to the Europe and is sending at this point in time to UK is that no doubt the cases are rising, but the fact is that our hospitals are not full to the capacity. So once you see a situation, as you said yourself, once you see a situation wherein the number of cases is rising, but the deaths are not there, the threat perception of the pandemic reduces. So people don't see it as a grave threat to their health. So once they don't see it as a grave threat to their health, the chances of taking precautions reduces. So people move around without masks, they don't follow social distancing norms, they party normally as they would, because they don't see it as something that will cause death, as they saw in the first part of the pandemic in some parts of Italy, for example. Florence was somewhere which suffered a lot at that point in time.
Okay.
So probably that is the key. This is something that you see around the world, not just in Europe and other parts as well. We need to communicate better to the people as far as this pandemic is concerned, because it's not just the death that we are worried about. It's also the fact that what Taiwan is doing, for example, or what New Zealand did, or Australia did, they followed much more stricter protocols. They are living better than what we are at this point in time.
Okay. Dr. Raina, let me ask you from an Indian perspective. We're doing very well in vaccination. We've crossed the 1 billion mark. I think it's 1.07 billion today if we take the morning figures till 7 a.m. this morning. But then again, as you say, vaccination is no foolproof defense against the infection. We need to follow COVID appropriate behavior. But the fact remains we've got a large population to vaccinate still. These are single dosages or a very small percentage of people who've taken the second dosage. So we still have a road ahead to travel. Do we need to be concerned in India, given that it is rising in parts of the world and even just next door in China?
We need to be concerned, and primarily we need to be concerned because of two things at this point. One, we have not been able to completely vaccinate everybody across the country. It is not in our realm at this point in time. It will take us some time to completely vaccinate everybody. Despite the fact that we have a more efficacious vaccine than China does have. Chinese vaccine is nowhere as close to the vaccine that we have.
Oh, really? Is that scientific? Dr. Raina, is that scientifically proven that the Sino vaccine is, the Indian vaccine is more efficacious than the Sino vaccine?
Yes, this is in public domain. The claim that the vaccine itself makes, it's not something that I have cooked out of my own self. This is something that is in the public domain. The effectiveness of preventing deaths, and it's all in the public domain. So that's there in the public domain for everybody to see. So we have a better vaccine than them as far as its efficacy is concerned. That's one part of it. But we still have not been able to vaccinate large populations in India as we would have wanted. And second, we are entering into 2-3 months which are very active for us as far as Indians are concerned. So we are in the area of major festivals now. One, we are in the area of marriage season now. So this is the season where most of the marriages happen in India. And this is the time when festivals happen. So you could see people roaming around the markets in huge numbers. So we need to reinforce that COVID-appropriate behavior. We need to communicate to people in large numbers at this point in time across India and need to tell them, look, you want to move around, you want to enjoy your festivals, but it is absolutely necessary that you continue to wear good quality masks wherever you go in public places. We need to reinforce those protocols which we had held for some period of time with regard to marriages, with regard to functions. We need to reduce the numbers. We need to reduce the timing of these. And we also need to ensure the fact that the shops and the shopping malls that we enter do follow certain guidelines as far as this pandemic is concerned, as also continue to use vaccination as the tool. But in addition, we also need to tell our Indians that we need to follow what we did earlier on when we asked our elders to stay home, avoid going out, and reduce the total number of people who are on the road as far as infection is concerned. So once we reduce the number on the road, we are less likely to pick up infection. Because invariably, what has been seen, we saw it happening in the month of February and March in India this year only. Once the numbers start dropping down, precautions also start dropping down, and people tend to delay vaccination. So these three things happen together. Number of cases dropping, vaccination drops, and people tend to take precautions lightly. So we need to probably communicate that these three things need to be continued to be used. I was watching your television yesterday, and day before yesterday, in fact, when I saw that there was a very beautiful comment that came from the commentator who was reporting on Ayodhya. It said, Ram ne na dharya khoya na dharm, which is absolutely necessary. We need to be patient, and we need to religiously follow COVID-appropriate behavior. These are absolute necessities for India.
Okay. So, Doctor, you saying the threat hasn't gone away yet, but let me ask you, as a practitioner of community medicine, you know, vaccination is going to take a lot of time till everybody is vaccinated. As you say, unless everybody is safe, nobody is safe. Then you say vaccination is no foolproof defense against it. We will have to follow COVID appropriate behavior. We see the virus raise its ugly head. You know, now it is Eastern Europe, sometimes it's some other place. Is it something that now is going to be a part of our lifestyles? Are we going to wear masks? Are we not? Is the world not going to be like it was before?
No, I'm an optimist as far as that is concerned.
Okay.
It's not going to be like that always. We have had our good times in the life. We will most likely, in all probability, regain those good times also. But this has been a master class, and this may have taught us a lot of things, that we can't take life for granted. Life is a great leveler. We have had beautiful times, we have bad times, we will also have beautiful times. So the fact is that most of these pandemics have a lifespan. Even if we are worried about it, think about it, concerned about it, or at times depressed about the fact that we are not able to help, but they themselves, they have a lifespan and they have to end someday. And it is, we are nearly on the verge of ending it, if not by the end of this year, but in next year, we are absolutely sure that we will be able to end this pandemic. But till then, we need to be careful, because as I said, if we are not able to reduce the numbers, we are always going to have the chance of picking up a new mutation, and again rolling out of a new type of pandemic. You see it this way. At this point in time, if you look at the current pandemic was caused by SARS-CoV-2, we had a similar SARS-CoV-1, for example, in 2003-4. We had similar episodes happening across the world, but they didn't snowball into such a big pandemic. So if we are able to reduce the numbers at this point in time, we will end this pandemic. But if we continue to have higher numbers, we may have a new variant coming up which will spiral into a new pandemic. So it's very important that we reduce the numbers, continue vaccinating people, and follow the guidelines. That is the key. And trust me, we will have a better tomorrow. We will have a better 2022. If not the beginning of 2022, but the end of 2022 will be beautiful for us.
Okay. So the threat is not over yet. Follow COVID appropriate behavior, COVID protocols, get vaccinated. The government is increasing the pace of vaccination, and Dr. Raina says that we will have a better tomorrow. Honestly, personally, I'm sick and tired of it. I just want it to end. On that optimistic note, Dr. Raina, many thanks for joining us and sharing your perspective with us. Thank you. And moving on, let's now take a look at updates on the COVID-19 situation across the rest of the world. COVID-19 cases crossed 24 lakh, 93 crore. The total recoveries, world records more than 22 crore 58 lakh recoveries from the disease, while the number of fatalities stand above 50 lakh 44,000. The US continues to remain worst hit, over 4 crore 71 lakh cases in the country. More than 7 lakh 72,000 lives are lost due to COVID-19. And North Korea continued to intensify its anti-COVID efforts at schools while encouraging students to undertake extracurricular activities. Students were seen wearing face masks, sanitizing their hands, and underwent body temperature checks upon arriving at the Kumsong school, where employees were seen wearing protective suits and disinfecting classrooms and corridors. North Korea reopened schools in June of last year, but made it mandatory for children to wear masks in classes, and washing stations were installed. And New York's children get a new COVID-19 vaccine as the U.S. Center for Disease Control and Prevention recommended Pfizer Inc. And BioNTech SC shot for broad use in children 4 days after it was authorized by the U.S. Food and Drug Administration. The vaccine, shown to be more than 90% effective at preventing symptomatic infection in children, provides an avenue for fewer quarantines or for school closures and more normal activities and freedoms. So far, only Pfizer's shot has been authorized for use in the United States for those under the age of 16. The Joe Biden administration will focus on maximizing compliance with COVID-19 employer vaccine mandate. The White House spokesperson Karine Jean-Pierre said that the failure to comply the mask mandate for workers at U.S. companies would trigger a fine of about $14,000 per violation. Employers will not be required to provide or pay for tests. The administration estimates that about 5% of the employees covered by the rule will seek and receive religious or medical accommodations. The administration also said that millions of workers in healthcare facilities and nursing homes participating in the Medicare and Medicaid government healthcare programs will need to get their shots by the same date. The European Union's Parliament's first official delegation to Taiwan said at a news conference that further international integration of the diplomatically isolated island would diffuse potential conflict with China.
The more you interact with Taiwan, the further you get from a war situation, because the more you send the signal that it will have a cost to do anything outrageous against Taiwanese democracy. So the isolation would fuel the conflict. On the contrary, integration of Taiwan into our debate is actually diffusing the deep concerns about security in the strait.
At least 69 people, including a mayor, have been killed in an attack by gunmen in southwestern Niger. The assault was the latest in Niger's tri-border zone with Burkina Faso and Mali, a volatile area that has been the epicenter of a years-long conflict between state forces in the western portion of Africa's Sahel region and the armed groups linked to ISIL or ISIS and the Al-Qaeda. And staying on with news from Africa, Mali's interim authorities will confirm a date for post-coup elections after national reform consultations in December. A representative of a UN Security Council delegation said this after talks on Sunday. The timeline is a further sign that Mali's military leadership is likely to extend an 18-month transition to constitutional rule that it originally promised would culminate in presidential and legislative elections on the Feb 27th next year. The UN delegation met the transitional authorities, political parties and civil society representatives in Bamako over the weekend to assess Mali's progress back to democracy following the August 2020 overthrow of President Ibrahim Boubacar Keïta. And let's now take a look at some news from across the world.
South Africa's governing African National Congress took 46% of the vote in municipal elections, the final count showed on Thursday. It was the party's worst election outcome since taking power at the end of white minority rule in 1994. Voters punished the party for repeated corruption scandals and poor basic services in areas that have traditionally been ANC strongholds. The party has been steadily losing support and winning less than 50% of the vote this week. That raised the possibility, albeit still remote, that South Africa could be governed by a party other than the ANC in the not too distant future. Figures from the Electoral Commission put ANC's biggest rival, the Democratic Alliance, second on 22% of the vote and the Economic Freedom Fighters third on 10%. Amid what he called ongoing Russian aggression towards Ukraine, US State Department spokesperson Ned Price on Thursday said US Secretary of State Antony Blinken will meet Ukrainian Foreign Minister Dmytro Kuleba in Washington next week. He added, the meeting with US officials in Kiev this week would be an opportunity to reaffirm our commitment to and support for Ukraine's independence, its sovereignty and its territorial integrity, including in the face of ongoing Russian aggression. Talks aimed at reviving the landmark 2015 nuclear deal between Iran and 6 other nations are to resume this month. Iran's chief negotiator Ali Bagheri Khani in Twitter said Iran had agreed to start the negotiations aiming at the removal of unlawful and inhuman sanctions on 29th November in Vienna. The discussions have been on hold since election of Iran's new hardline president in June. The US pulled out of the deal under President Donald Trump, but Washington has since said it could consider rejoining. The Biden administration said it will attend the Vienna meet along with the remaining signatories UK, China, France, Germany and Russia. Portugal's President Marcelo Rebelo de Sousa called a snap general election for January 30, a week after Parliament threw out the minority socialist government's 2022 budget bill ending 6 years of relative political stability. The socialists' former left-wing allies, the Left Bloc and the Communists, rejected the budget along with all right-wing parties. Rebelo de Sousa said the rejection left the ruling party alone. He said the Portuguese wanted the budget to be approved at a time Portugal is recovering from COVID-19 pandemic and that the situation left him with no other option but to dissolve parliament and call an election. Rebelo de Sousa said that the election campaign is likely to start shortly after New Year's Day. World Today Desk, DD India.
And a video released by Tigray TV showed forces from the group marching in two towns it says to have captured over the weekend. Government disputed the claims but confirmed on Monday that TPLF infiltrators had killed 100 youths in Kombolcha. Tigrayan television screened footage of Kombolcha and Desi, all in Amhara region, two towns the rebellious group said it had captured in recent days. Tigray TV is controlled by the regional administration led by Tigray People's Liberation Front, which is not recognized by Addis Ababa. Prime Minister of Ethiopia Abiy Ahmed's government imposed a 6-month state of emergency on Tuesday with immediate effect, which allows it to order citizens of military age to undergo training and accept military duties. The Tigrayan forces are in the town of Kemisi in Amhara state, about 325 kilometers from the capital. This is what the spokesperson for the Tigray People's Liberation Front said late on Wednesday. And now on to some sports news. English club Tottenham's Hotspurs beat Dutch club VITESSE 3-2 in a thrilling Europa Conference League match. With this, manager Antonio Conte has started his winning campaign. Son Heung-min scored for Spurs in the 14th minute to put the team 1-0 ahead. Lucas Moura scored the second goal for Tottenham in the 22nd minute. 6 minutes later, Rasmussen scored his own goal to give Tottenham a 3-0 lead. However, Rasmussen scored the Dutch club's first goal in the 32nd minute to reduce the scoreline to 1-3. After this match, Tottenham remains in second place. And substitute Jamie Vardy had a penalty saved as Leicester were held by Spartak Moscow in a draw that leaves their hopes of qualifying from the Europa League Group C in the balance. The Foxes are third in a tight group with 2 games remaining, and Brendan Rodgers' side will rue a failure to take 3 points on Thursday. The hosts had been completely dominant, but it was the visitors who took a surprise lead when former Chelsea winger Victor Moses headed in unmarked following a swift attack. Leicester are 2 points behind the group leaders Napoli, who have 7 points after thumping second-placed Legia Warsaw 4-1 earlier. And moving to the other international sports now, Serbian tennis legend Novak Djokovic has reached the quarterfinals of the Paris Masters tennis tournament. Djokovic wants to face Gael Monfils in the pre-quarterfinals, but was given a walkover due to an injury to the French player. With this, Djokovic has also made a new record in his name. He has won the most matches while being world number 1. Novak Djokovic has 418 matches to his name, while Roger Federer has 417 matches to his name. And world number 2 Daniel Medvedev needed 3 sets to see off Sebastian Corda of the United States 4-6, 6-1, 6-3 at the Paris Masters. The US Open champion will play Frenchman Hugo Gaston, who stomped back from a 0-5 second set deficit to beat Spaniard Carlos Alcaraz 6-4, 7-5 and reach the quarterfinals. A few months ago, that veteran taekwondo athlete and trainer Yasamin Azizi was coaching 60 to 70 athletes a day in Kabul, but since the Taliban retook Afghanistan in August, she's been confined to coaching no more than 10 a day in an empty gym in secret. Azizi has been a member of Afghanistan's national female taekwondo team for the past 6 years and has participated in major matches. Making matters more complicated, Azizi is an ethnic Hazara, a predominantly Shia minority which have long been discriminated against in Afghanistan from a mix of factors, of which religion is just one. Many recent attacks claimed by Sunni extremist group Islamic State have targeted Shia mosques across the country. Azizi said she has considered leaving Afghanistan for good to pursue her taekwondo career. And let's now tell you the news beyond headlines.
Brazilian artists who know life in the favelas are bringing their colorful expressions to the Museum of Art in Rio de Janeiro. Your Art Brings You Closer is the name of the graffiti exhibit organized by the Central Union of Favelas and Microsoft to commemorate Favela Day. The partnership with Microsoft included a like competition on Instagram from which the graffiti artist Jeff Sion emerged victorious. The exhibit will be open through December 5. Non-fungible token New York City is showcasing more than 500 speakers ranging from Reddit co-founder Alexis Ohanian to filmmaker Quentin Tarantino. The Dreamverse NFT Festival features the work of more than 150 NFT artists. The floor at Dreamverse features virtual and augmented reality experiences. Among the artists who are having their work featured include Jose N. Silva, who credits the pandemic for the rise of digital art. Tickets are $30 for the daytime gallery, but increase for evening events and parties. Fall foliage is at its peak in New England, with trees changing colors as part of an annual rite in the northern United States. Trees show their fall foliage colors around the Wachusett Reservoir in Massachusetts, where an American flag hangs on the old stone church, built in 1891. Originally part of a town lost in the creation of the Wachusett Reservoir. An Israeli startup has joined the fight against global warming by seeking inspiration in the upper atmosphere, where it hopes to send fleets of balloons that will trap carbon dioxide for recycling. High Hopes Labs developed a system that captures the carbon where it has almost solidified far above the earth. The company has tested its system on a small scale, releasing gas-filled balloons with a box that serves as a carbon capture device attached underneath. The frozen carbon is then separated from the air to be brought back to Earth and can be recycled. The company aims to build larger balloons within 2 years that could each be deployed to remove a ton of carbon a day at a cost below $100, much less than comparable on-ground facilities currently in use. NASA on Thursday introduced the space agency's first planetary defense test mission, the Double Asteroid Redirection Test, or DART, a spacecraft they plan to launch later this month on a mission to crash into an asteroid. The goal of the mission is to determine whether the impact of the spacecraft will change the asteroid's course. DART, which launches on November 24th, will target a double asteroid Didymos and its moon Dimorphos. Neither asteroid poses a threat to the Earth, the DART team said. DART, which will launch from California's Vandenberg Air Force Base, will reach Dimorphos and Didymos in the fall of 2022. Adorned with more than 10,000 diamonds and worth at least £1.5 million, renowned artist Debbie Wingham says her latest sparkling creation is the world's most expensive picture frame. Known as the world's most expensive artist for her record-breaking, pricey fashion and cake creations, Wingham crafted the diamond-encrusted circular frame in the image of a clock face with Roman numerals. Revealed in Dubai for the first time, the frame holds an oil painting by Wingham of Dubai's Burj Khalifa, the world's tallest building. World Today Desk, DD India.
And India's glorious fight for freedom is one of the greatest struggles the modern world has ever witnessed. In today's episode of Saga of Freedom, we recall the role of freedom fighter Chittaranjan Das on his birth anniversary. And today we remember the Lion of Bombay, Firoz Shah Mehta, who died on 5th of November in 1915. Take a look.
In today's episode, we remember freedom fighter, political activist, scholar and poet Chittaranjan Das, who was born on 5th November 1870. Popularly known as Deshbandhu, Das was a close associate of Mahatma Gandhi and founder leader of the Swaraj Party in Bengal.
In London, he befriended Sri Aurobindo Ghosh, Atul Prasad Sen and Sarojini Naidu among others, and together they promoted Dadabhai Nauroji in the British Parliament. In 1894, in a stunning move, Chittaranjan Das gave up his lucrative legal practice and plunged headlong into the independence movement against the British colonial government.
Chittaranjan Das successfully defended Aurobindo Ghosh on charges of involvement in the Alipur bomb case in 1909. In his Uttarpara speech, Sri Aurobindo gratefully acknowledged that Chittaranjan Das saved him. Chittaranjan Das was actively involved in the activities of Anushilan Samiti. He was a leading figure in Bengal during the non-cooperation movement of 1919 to 1922 and initiated the boycott of British-made clothes, setting an example by burning his own European clothes and wearing khadi.
C.R. Das was elected as the first mayor of Calcutta Municipal Corporation in 1924. He was a believer in non-violence and constitutional methods for the realization of national independence and advocated Hindu-Muslim unity, cooperation and communal harmony and championed the cause of national education. Chittaranjan Das emerged as a distinguished Bengali poet when, during the troubled days of the national movement, he published the first 2 volumes of his collection of poems titled Malancha and Mala. In 1913, he published Sagar Sangeet, the Songs of the Sea.
Namiye nao gyaner bojha, soite nari bojhar bhar, amar সকল অঙ্গ হাঁপিয়ে উঠে নয়নে তেরি অন্ধকার.
In 1925, Chittaranjan's health began to fail due to overwork. Chittaranjan went to Darjeeling to recuperate his health. Mahatma Gandhi visited him and stayed with him for some days. Deshbandhu Chittaranjan Das passed away on 16th of June 1925.
আজি হৃদয় মোর ছিঁড়েছে বন্ধন.
The funeral procession in Calcutta was led by Mahatma Gandhi, who said that Deshbandhu was one of the greatest of men who dreamed and talked of freedom of India and of nothing else. C.R. Das's heart knew no difference between Hindus and Muslims, and that he bore no ill will to even Englishmen.
প্রভাতে জাগ্রত হৃদি শেষ করো গান, আমার জীবন ভরা বিশ্বের আহ্বান.
Today we remember the Lion of Bombay, Firoz Shah Mehta, who died on 5th November 1915. He was born on 4th August 1845 in Bombay and graduated from Elphinstone College in 1864. Mehta went to Lincoln's Inn in London to study law.
After coming back to India, he raised the need for reforms of the Bombay Municipal Government and wrote the Bombay Municipal Act of 1872, earning him the title of Father of Bombay Municipality. He became the Municipal Commissioner of Bombay Municipality in 1873 and its president 4 times.
Mehta was one of the founding members and president of the Indian National Congress in 1890, held in Calcutta. He published the Bombay Chronicle, which detailed the treatment of Indians in South Africa.
When Gandhi arrived in India, Firoz Shah Mehta presided over a public meeting to welcome him on January 12, 1915. He died later that year in Bombay.
On November the 5th, 1945, the INA trials began at the Red Fort. The surviving members of the INA were tried by the British colonial government for treason. However, the decision to make the Red Fort trials public proved to be a grave miscalculation on the part of the British, as it led to a new wave of nationalism.
The progress of the trial led to mutiny within the British Army, most notable being the mutiny of the Royal Indian Navy. Although the mutiny was quickly put down, the British realized that they were effectively losing the support of the British Indian Army, the very institution that kept them in power for so long.
And let's take a look at what made history on this day in that year.
On this day in 1912, Democrat Woodrow Wilson won the US presidency, becoming the only man to defeat two former presidents, William Howard Taft and Theodore Roosevelt, in the same election. On 5th November in 1955, French painter Maurice Utrillo died. He is known for his paintings of the streets of Paris, particularly Montmartre. On this day in 1965, Rhodesian Prime Minister Ian Smith declared a state of emergency in preparation for his unilateral declaration of independence from Britain in what is now Zimbabwe. In 1990, on this day, Meir Kahane, American-born rabbi who advocated expelling all Arabs from Israel, was shot dead in New York. On this day in 1996, Pakistan Prime Minister Benazir Bhutto was sacked by the country's president, who accused her government of corruption, nepotism and misrule. World Today Desk, DD India.
And that's it then in World Today. Thanks for watching. Namaskar.